What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Newscast. I'm your boy Weapon X, and once again, we've had a jam-packed weekend of independent wrestling, and I'm joined by my man James Lascolo to break it all down for you. James, what's going on, brother?
Man, I'm not gonna lie, it's kind of just dawned on me where we are in the calendar year, being at the start of October, really kind of the downswing of the year. It's like we're really gonna get to see what the big points of the year and who the real MVPs are. But for right now, we had a pretty solid weekend of things going on, a little bit more quieter than weekends past. But let's just go right ahead and cover what went down, shall we?
Absolutely, man. Let's get right into it. The very first thing to kick this off kind of hits close to home to me. I know I was kind of considering going to the AIW show over the weekend. I ended up going to the Notre Dame-Cincinnati game instead. However, someone did go to AIW, and that was Matt Cardona, and he came out with the AIW Absolute Intense Championship from Josh Bishop. So huge win for Cardona there. A little bit more of his impact being felt on the independent circuit. It's very similar to what took place with GCW a couple months back. And it looks like he's up to the same antics of going to a promotion, winning their championship, and then finding a way to piss off their entire fan base. So if you look out there on Twitter, there's some really funny tweets about people who were really not happy that this happened, and they're definitely worth a read. If you go out there and do a little digging, you can find them. It's pretty good stuff.
Yeah, I'm gonna be one to kind of actually jump onto Cardona's side here, where it's like fans that are kind of being like, oh, now I'm never going to go to another AIW show, or I'm done supporting this company now that Cardona's champ. It's like, come on, really? Like, Cardona personally has been doing some of my favorite stuff through this year, and he's only really been doing it since like June, and that really tells you how much of an effect he's had on the indies world, where he can just kind of come in and shake up a company by doing just kind of the generic sports entertainment guy kind of shtick and pissing off that kind of core indie fan base. But I mean, just as a whole, though, seeing Cardona kind of get this spotlight, being someone that's mostly been a TV wrestler where he's either worked in WWE or AEW or Impact, it's cool to see him on this independent wrestling level, kind of not only drawing this heat, but also kind of making shows interesting and entertaining at the same time with that same sports entertainment shtick.
Yeah, I mean, he's arguably the MVP of 2021. If you gotta, really think about it, and some of the character work that's being done here, some of the, even the in-ring work. I mean, the guy can wrestle. He's putting out good interactions with fans and not fans, and he's kind of taking the whole thing by storm. So good for him. I love it personally, just like you mentioned. It's really good stuff, man, and I hope it continues.
Yeah, man, this is really going to shake up the AIW universe, but moving on from AIW to something that kind of went a little bit under the radar, at least personally amongst you and I, Weapon X, and that's the United Wrestling World Championship crowning its first champion. Chris Dickinson won the finals of a championship tournament to crown the inaugural champion, finally defeating Mike Bennett. Now, for those who don't really know what United Wrestling is, or United World Wrestling, it's sort of like, I guess you can describe it's like an NWA sort of body, where if you've definitely heard of the likes of Championship Wrestling from Hollywood and Championship Wrestling from Atlanta and Memphis, those are kind of the offshoots of this sort of company. And now it seems like Chris Dickinson is going to kind of serve that traveling world's champion role, which I really like, in the forms of, the IWTV Independent World's Championship, and now this, where you have one champion that kind of signifies the entire sort of circuit of different companies. What do you think about this, Weapon X?
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of an interesting concept. I wasn't super familiar with some of this stuff. We were talking offline, and some of the promotions and things that's under that umbrella I am familiar with. Some of it I'm not. But I got to do myself the service of going out and digging up this match because I'm a big fan of Mike Bennett. I'm a huge fan of Chris Dickinson. And from everything that I'm reading, it sounds like it was a really good match. So I'd be really interested to see. I mean, obviously, if you want to crown an inaugural champion, I think those are two really good guys to have be that champion. So I have to go out there and see where we can find this. I know it was broadcast on Fight, so maybe they still have that option out there to buy the previous show, and then we can kind of see what happened here and what was the rest of the card. I know West Coast wrestling for me sometimes is a little more difficult to get into, but it just doesn't seem to be as abundant as it is on the East Coast. So East Coast here, we're kind of spoiled by a lot of promotions, a lot of wrestlers, a lot of good wrestling, and there's always an East Coast bias, even when it comes to other professional sports and stuff like that, where it's just things on the East Coast just get watched more than things on the West Coast, and that's just kind of how it's always been. But this is one I want to track down for sure.
Oh, most definitely. Looking at the rest of the card too, I see the likes of Alex Coughlin, Clark Connors, Carl Fredericks, Daniel Garcia, Juicy Finau, these names that we're pretty familiar with already out of, other companies, but it seems like they got a good collective of talent between all these different brands.
Yeah, and speaking of places that have a lot of talent, we had a collection of events over the weekend with ICW that was really good and really talked about, whatever you may think about ICW and how they do business. They put on some really good shows and they have some really talented people involved in their production. I love hearing the struggles on commentary. And after the events of this weekend, they have announced that John Wayne Murdoch and Eric Ryan will go head-to-head in a 60-minute Iron Man death match at No Holds Barred. So, coming off the success of that weekend and then dropping a major announcement, and then I'm sure they're going to have more announcements to come because they have a show coming up at the end of the month where they're going to be doing a lot more of their crazy antics. So I'm a big fan of ICW. I like the stuff that they do, and I hope they continue to have these crazy moments. If you didn't get a chance to check out Sadika and Mickey Knuckles from Friday night, do yourself a favor and go out to IWTV and check that out. It was insane.
Yeah, I still got to do a little bit of catching up on this weekend, but, he's seeing this news to me. I think it's pretty excellent, this being sort of the sequel to last year's first ever 60-minute Iron Man death match between Orin and Murdoch. Honestly, Eric Ryan is definitely a strong choice for that second match against Murdoch, especially where we now have the championship on the line. I kind of like, too, that this is starting to become, or this seems like it's going to become the signature kind of match that ICW NHB is going to bolster as sort of their stipulation where, not too many companies, I'm sure, are too quick to do a full-on 60-minute death match because of the amount of plunder that it would entail. But, NHB kind of going full into it for, the second year now, it really kind of gives them a little more of, like, that being their match where, we had CZW with the Cage of Death and, just having that kind of signature stipulation to really differentiate yourself from the rest of the competition. But yeah, looking forward to where that's going. But while we're still in the deathmatch world, we have two big arrivals coming to U.S. soil from the land of Japan. Not only Masashi Takeda, but also Rina Yamashita are both confirmed for the NGI 6 and GCW's Evil Deeds. That back-to-back days of shows. Now, Weapon X, if you don't mind, I think I'm going to take a little bit of a front seat here on this story just to let you know how huge a deal this is.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You're the expert here.
To kind of give you the full Mike Tenay international news on these two. Masashi Takeda, what else can you say? Him being a former NGI winner, him holding belts in both Big Japan and Freedoms, and I mean also having an 11-4-1 MMA record. But Rina Yamashita, let me tell you, man, I've talked about Kennedy Copeland holding it down in the deathmatch world for women here in the US, but Rina is one of the toughest, period, in the deathmatch world, be it in Japan or globally. I mean, just to give you an idea of the year she's had, she has had earlier in the year, she was one half of the King of Freedom's tag team champions along with Minoru Fujita, but also she's main evented 2 separate Freedom shows alongside the likes of Takeda, along the likes of Sakura, along the likes of Violento Jack, and even Jun Kasai himself, She is going to be a serious threat to the NGI tournament field. And I mean, you can feel free to do your research going into NGI to see what she's all about, but also feel free to just let her blow your mind herself when she competes.
Yeah, this should be really good. I can't wait to see the entire field. I went to the NGI a couple years ago, had a tremendous time. Probably the first and last time that I ever sit front row at a deathmatch show, but it was good. So I'm hoping that some more of these announcements come trickling in, and who knows, we might make our way up to Chicago for that action. So we had a little bit of a card subject to change with Pro Wrestling Revolver over the weekend, as we saw Sami Callihan end up being put on the shelf with an ankle injury. They kind of mixed the card around a little bit, and they initially announced that the Moxley match would then, they were going to announce who he was going to be wrestling, kind of like a surprise opponent. It turns out it's going to be Jimmy Jacobs facing Moxley at Wrestling Revolver. We're only about 20 some days away from this show, the return of Wrestling Revolver. I hope that Sammy's injury didn't shelf any plans that Revolver had for shows after this one or anything else that they had up their sleeve. It's really unfortunate timing, and I feel really bad for him, having had numerous conversations with Sammy here in the Dayton area, and knowing how much Wrestling Revolver means to him, knowing how much just this show and this card alone meant to him, to kind of finally get Revolver up and running again. They haven't ran since, I think, sometime in 2019. So, I know they wanted to get back to running. I know he was really looking forward to this. They had a big matchup planned, a big tag team match, and he just gets injured at a very unfortunate time. So hopefully that doesn't shelf anything that they had planned, because I really, really like this company. I want them to come back and run in Dayton and not Iowa. I don't want to drive to Iowa more than once, but I want to support this company. I want to see some more of his stuff. So it's going to be insane, man, for these guys to kind of rekindle that fire and get this match going. Not to mention the rest of the stat card and the other things that have been moved around. I mean, this is shaping up to be a must-watch event for sure.
Oh, most definitely. I mean, Jimmy Jacobs versus John Moxley is a huge match to get you in the door, but I mean, also part of the card that got shifted around too, which was originally the Wolves taking on the Switchblades, is now turned into a vacant Revolver tag team titles match between the Wolves, Eddie Edwards, and Davey Richards, and Infrared being Logan James and Tyler Matrix, which that's a huge, huge contest for James and Matrix, being able to take on such established indie veterans like Richards and Edwards. And I mean, just world-traveled class athletes. This is all theirs to win if they can pull it off.
Yeah, huge spotlight for these guys, man. Huge opportunity. And I mean, you're going to be showcasing what you got against some really good wrestlers, but you're also on a card with a lot of talent. So that announcement definitely stands out, and is an opportunity to make a name for yourself in front of a lot of people for sure.
And I mean, while we're in the spirit of talking about making a name for yourself, I mean, even though you can say that this announcement or the person involving it had already had a name before Game Changer, GCW just recently announced that PCO is returning to Game Changer Wrestling. And to me, that is a huge, huge deal. I mean, I know people will think of the Quebecers and Jean-Pierre Lafitte, but I mean, truly, this a modern run that PCO is on has to be the best work of his career. And I mean, personally, I can recall watching on Fight TV the night that he had that crazy match with Walter, just how insane it was that he was going for moonsaults and going for dives at his age, and it blew my mind, and it put me firmly in the PCO train ever since. How do you feel about this announcement, Weapon X?
Oh, I was at that match actually. So, yeah, I remember. Matter of fact, there was Brett Lauderdale tweeted out earlier today talking about PCO, and I'm gonna read the tweet here where he says, "I still remember when Janela messaged me frantically from a Black Label Pro show in early 2018, saying we need to book PCO for Spring Break 2 in New Orleans. What happened from there was history. Looking forward to welcoming the Extreme Champ back to GCW." And ironically, I was at that Black Label show as well when PCO was there, and I mean, just an absolute madman, just going through and doing anything and everything to kind of make a name for this independent run that he was on, and this kind of character transformation where he was doing the battery shock thing and all that stuff, and people couldn't kill him. And I mean, he went on a tremendous run, and it led him all the way back to a major deal with Ring of Honor, and he was doing big stuff with Ring of Honor, 6-man championship and stuff like that. So this right here feels like a really cool homecoming in a way of like it's a big announcement, but it's kind of like it feels like really good to see it happening. So what can we expect when he gets there? I mean, probably more of what we saw before, right? I mean, he doesn't seem like the guy has a slower speed. I feel like he's just going and going. So really cool announcement. It's building up to what is going to be. This is kind of like the weekend we've all been looking forward to, right? Like this is the big weekend, and it feels bigger than kind of everything that went down in Chicago, right? Like if this weekend feels like it's bigger than that, and I think this announcement kind of helps build that as well.
Oh man, I mean, it's just a huge deal that he's coming back. And one of the first things that kind of came to my mind when it came to the idea of PCO returning is, will they reactivate the GCW Extreme Championship while the the Ultraviolent Championship is held up overseas with Drew Parker?
I mean, if the tweet from Brett is any type of foreshadowing or anything, he did put the words "extreme" in all caps when he said welcome the Extreme Champ back to GCW, and Extremes in all caps. Is that foreshadowing? Maybe. Or is it just, pointing out the fact that PCO is definitely, in fact, extreme in more ways than just the championship? So that remains to be seen, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, PCO isn't the only piece of talent that has been teased for Game Changer Wrestling. Why don't you tell us about this next guy that's been teased online?
Yeah, so it sounds like Dirty Dango is also being teased for GCW in Atlantic City, and that's the artist formerly known as Fandango, who I've kind of been looking forward to this in a way. I always thought that when I kind of first started watching WWE, or when I started coming back and getting into WWE in like 2017, 2016 timeframe, I always thought that Fandango had like an amazing look. Like he looked really good. I always thought the dancing character was kind of stupid. But when they started doing once he got in that tag team with Tyler Breeze and they started doing some of the comedy stuff and they were, but they could still get in there and really go and they could still really wrestle. I started liking him even more, but I just always thought he had like a really good look. Like, I mean, he's in tremendous shape. And now that now that the reins are kind of off and he's set to maybe make this GCW appearance, what are we going to see from him? Like, what type of independent wrestler are we going to see? Like, is he about to go on this Matt Cardona type of run? I don't know that he has the same, the same, the same heat maybe that Cardona has. I think Cardona kind of already had that persona going into this thing, but if this guy goes on a crazy run, and shows that, hey, I can wrestle like a son of a bitch and starts going to all these promotions and, that's going to be sweet, and these type of things are going to happen with a lot of these dudes that were released that can really wrestle, but were really being held down by the way some of the bigger companies do things. I think we're going to be in for a treat, come this winter and into early spring, where a lot of these former WWE NXT guys are really killing it out here on the indies and getting great matches out of guys that are already out here and established.
Oh man, I mean, we're talking about, the now dirty Dango, and I'm excited to see what he's doing in Game Changer, but I mean, also, he's already got a date ahead of him this month with Limitless Wrestling in a huge 6-man, which I'm going to be excited to see. It's looking like a big, big match, but here too, it's going to be fun to see how he turns up in GCW if it's in Atlantic City and how he'll be used going forward. But, with that being said, we're looking down the barrel of a big upcoming schedule that starts off on Thursday with the long-awaited Season 3 premiere of Beyond Wrestling's Uncharted Territory, going down on 8 p.m. East on Thursday the 7th. You're going to see some huge, huge matches for a season opener, being topped off by Alex Shelley taking on Daniel Garcia, who has really been one of those MVPs of this year in independent wrestling. But beyond that, you have a huge tag team collision between Killer Kelly and Alexander James of Team Rally, taking on Matt Makowski and Masha Slamovich. You also have the one called Manders taking on the Dirty Daddy, Chris Dickinson. And we have the start of the tag team Discovery Gauntlet, the main event of Jay Lyon and Midas Black taking on 9 to 5, Jack Verville and Lewis Linden. Now, this is going to be a great show and a great way to kick off a season of Uncharted Territory.
Oh yeah, man, I'm turned all the way up for this. Kicks off the weekend, starts on Thursday nights. Kind of always had that, soft spot for Beyond when they were running before, and we're gonna have our TV wrestling on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, depending on what you watch. And now we're going to have something to look forward to every week on Thursdays. That's kind of that empty spot right now, depending on what companies you watch. Thursday is kind of dry right now, but with Beyond coming back for Uncharted Territory, man, Season 3 premiere kicks off the weekend, and it gives us that Thursday time slot back. So now we got good wrestling almost every night of the week again. And that's really cool. We're really spoiled right now, for sure. But then kicking off on Friday is a show that I think we've all been looking forward to for a really long time. And that's the IWTV Untitled show, which is going to bring us the IWTV Independent Wrestling World Championship match between Wheeler Yuta and Alex Shelley. The Absolute and AIW Tag Team Championship, Rip City Shooters against the Philly Marino Experience rematch. So we got that coming. We also have matches from Action Wrestling, Camp Leapfrog, Hardcore Hustle, Limitless, Premier Wrestling Federation, and Pro Wrestling Magic are all kind of bringing some of their own flavor to this IWTV show. It's good. It looks loaded. I mean, there's some really good stuff in here. And the fact that every every promotion is kind of putting people together to kind of represent their style, their brand. The Action Wrestling Championship between Eric Royal and O'Shea Edwards, like that's a showcase of their organization, and this is going to be a show to really, really pay attention to, because they're bringing all the heavy hitters for this one, and I'm really going to be looking forward to see what happens in that the IWTV Championship match between Yuta and Shelley, because it kind of feels like Yuta's on his way out of independent wrestling, but it doesn't really feel like Alex Shelley is built to stick around independent wrestling for a long time either. So it'll be real interesting to see what happens there. And don't forget, I think Mathers is still holding on to a title shot claim as well. Is that right?
That's correct. And I mean, most interesting, they're in H2O's building, so it could happen at any time. But being that it's in H2O's building, of course, in their representation on the card, they had to bring a Triangle of Violence death match between Anthrax, Gigi Everson, and Austin Luke. 3 guys that are tremendous in the ring but can get violent as anyone else. But I mean, too, they got Rip Bison and Alec Price representing Limitless Wrestling in a one-on-one contest, which I think couldn't have been picked any more perfectly without having to go to the upper guys like Anthony Green. These two, they really represent the kind of young and hungry side of Limitless Wrestling, and I'm sure they're going to tear the house down with the match they're going to put on. But I mean, I also got to show a little love here to WWR Plus, coming out of my home state of Massachusetts. We got Kennedy Copeland taking on Megan Bayne, who many see as the sort of uncrowned ace of WWR Plus. She's been kind of feuding it out with Trish Adora since the start of the relaunch, but they have yet to have the proper one-on-one match to determine who the proper ace of the company is. But I mean, this is not the only show going on IWTV that night, because it's going to be a doubleheader. Starting at 10 p.m. East on IWTV, we have West Coast Pros No Leaf cover. And the big match on that card is going to be Daniel Garcia taking on Minoru Suzuki, which is a huge, huge match for Garcia, as he's kind of on the home stretch of this independent run that he's been on. But that's not the only big matches that they can boast on that night, as we have a West Coast Pro Championship match between AJ Gray, the new champion, and Davey Richards. AJ, at the end of his championship win, said, if you want the belt, you're going to have to kill him for it. And Davey Richards just might take him up on that offer. But, I mean, we also couldn't talk about the show without mentioning the huge one-on-one clash that's going to be Alex Zane and Hammerstone. Zane and Alexander Hammerstone have such polar opposite styles. It's going to be interesting to see how they negotiate each other in the ring.
I think we might not see that match, actually, because I think Hammerstone was injured over the weekend at MLW. So no one has said anything, but I'll be real interested to see if that match still takes place, because he had a pretty gnarly looking ankle. He posted some pictures. It was about on par with the Sami Callihan injury. So, if you're kind of squeamish, don't look at the Hammerstone pictures on Twitter. But that ankle looks like it's in some really bad shape. So, yeah, unfortunately, we might not see that. But it'll be interesting to see. Cards subject to change, and it'll be interesting to see who they can pull in that short time frame, especially with so much going on back east. This jam-packed weekend, it might be difficult to find a last-minute replacement, but that's one that I was definitely looking forward to. It's just, Alex Zane is incredible. I like Hammerstone a lot too, and I think that those guys squaring off could have been big time. Maybe we get an opportunity to see it again in the future, but I'll be real surprised if it takes place on the 8th. But, don't stop there, because the 8th is not done. There is one more show on the 8th. And when I when I say these cards are loaded, man, it just keeps going. You just continue to keep talking about loaded card after loaded card. Hybrid Wrestling presents Aces Low on the 8th at 8 p.m. on YouTube. So once again, you got some, multiple screens, multiple monitors. You got a TV in the kitchen or something. You kind of get some multiple screens going because you're gonna have 3, 4 shows, going at around the same time. And this hybrid wrestling card is giving us some interesting stuff. We're gonna see one called Manders against Otis Kogar. We're gonna see Carlito against JJ Garrett. And then there's a really good 4-way between Masha Slamovich, Trisha Dora, Sahara 7, and Marty Bell. And then Gangrel against Mance Warner. Like, what? Are you kidding me? Like, that's a pretty loaded, for hybrid, who usually has some really, really good cards. This is right in the line with everything they've done that I've seen so far.
And, it's just hybrid and stacked cards is kind of the status quo because, I mean, they just, between bringing back some older talent that's still got it and all the new, fresh talent that you see through the indies, like, hybrid, really, they just know how to put on a show. And, I mean, just a lot of these matches, looking down the card, like, one I'm particularly excited for is Young, Dumb, and Broke taking on the team of Yokai and Big Vin because, I mean, all of the people in this match I've been super excited for through the year. I mean, I especially got to point out Big Vin, who really owned it at Backyard Wrestling this year, and that sort of escalated to him being in JCW and now in this show for Hybrid. But I mean, also, of course, we got to mention just the absurd dream match that is Gangrel versus Mance Warner. Mance won't say no to a fight, be it old or young, male or female or otherwise. Mance Warner is always down for a good brawl, and Gangrel, I know, can still throw some strong punches and is going to jab the hell out of it with Mance. But man, just such a big weekend of cards, and it continues into the next day at 1 p.m. East on the 9th. We have JCW Locked Up, which is going down on YouTube for free. The big marquee match here, Everett Connors taking on Charles Mason in a steel cage, but the rest of the card just as stacked, as we see Billy Starks and the Duke of Hardcore, John Wayne Murdoch, take on Charles Mason's goons, Bam Sullivan and Slade. And we also have the Grim Reaper taking on the young, up-and-coming Nick Wayne, a match I'm personally looking forward to, amongst others here. What are you looking forward to on this card?
Oh man, I think we're all anticipating that steel cage match between Everett Connors and Charles Mason. This thing's been brewing, it's been building, and it got crazy at GCW's emo night where they attacked him, put him in the plastic bag. So this thing goes way back, man. And, with Billy also on the card, taking on Charles Mason's goons, this whole thing could kind of get out of control. You would like to think, we've talked about this before, steel cage match, right? It's supposed to be one-on-one. It's not supposed to, no one's supposed to be able to get in. No one's supposed to be able to get out, that kind of thing. But people always seem to find their way into the steel cage if they work, if they work hard enough. So does that bring us Billy and Murdoch? Do they get involved? How's this thing go down? And it's been brewing, it's been building, and it's been good. I mean, it's been really good. I think Charles Mason has done some tremendous work in this feud and his stuff with JCW. And don't forget, Josh Bishop is also announced for this card, and he's been dominating JCW for a good part of this year. So what happens here? We also have this crazy scramble with Marcus Mathers, frontman Ja, Steve Scott, Janai Kai, Steve Sanders, and Dylan McKay. Look for some crazy stuff there. And Matt Mikowski and JJ Garrett. I mean, Matt Mikowski's about to have a hell of a weekend. So, this could be a really good breakout weekend for somebody who I think's already kind of on the verge of just having a tremendous career. But that kind of brings us to the big show, the GCW Fight Club on Saturday at 8 p.m. Fight TV. We got the GCW World Championship match, Jon Moxley, Nick Gage with a special guest appearance from Mick Foley. We got Alex Zane versus Ninja Mac. Second Gear Crew against Alex Colon, G Raver, and Akira. I mean, this is it, right? Like this is kind of what everything's been building towards. All these other shows are kind of the appetizer, but GCW Fight Club is kind of the main course. And that Moxley Nick Gage match, man, that's kind of where we've been building like all year long to get back to this. You know, we've seen Nick Gage on AEW. We've seen Moxley show up at GCW several times. We saw him on AEW with the GCW hoodie on. I mean, this whole thing has kind of been, you know, the partnership and the working towards getting to this point. And now it all comes down to the come down, and somebody's gonna have to leave that ring with the championship. And I couldn't begin to tell you who I think that might be.
Man, you know, just looking on the back half of this weekend, you know, it's hard to overstate the star power that we're seeing here. You know, we have Moxley in the championship position with Gage, but we also have a special appearance by Mick Foley that's planned for Fight Club. We have, you know, Matt Cardona. We have a scheduled appearance by Leo Rush. And I mean, that's not even going without mentioning the next day, which we'll get to, you know, with Minoru Suzuki coming in for another round of GCW action. But I mean, just on this show alone, there's so much to look forward to, be it that main event super fight for the GCW title, be it the Internet Championship versus GCW career match between Effie and Matt Cardona, be it Akira's finally, you know, appearing at GCW. There's so much to look forward to. And honestly, this might be one of the shows that we're continuing to talk about as we go into year-end awards. But yeah, man, I'm real excited for all of this. I mean, I'm also particularly excited for Leo Rush, whose opponent has yet to be named. Yeah, but it's going to be really interesting to see what happens there. But noon Eastern on the 10th, the following day, we have the return of On Point Wrestling with Brain Trust 2. We have some strong matches on this card, including one I'm particularly looking forward to, Tony Deppen and Robert Martyr, two guys that are just so incredibly gifted between the ropes, getting to have a go at each other. We also have the team of Yokai taking on Marcus Mathers and Billy Starks. We have Hollow Wicked taking on Akira, and we have a huge match that is sure to get violent with the Storm of Intrails, the team of Dan O'Hare and Schlack, taking on Reed Bentley and John Wayne Murdoch of the Rejects.
Yeah, this is big time. That Yokai versus Marcus Mathers and Billy Starks match, it has my immediate attention. If you saw Billy and Janai at Chicago over the GCW Black Label weekend a couple weeks ago, that match was incredible. There's some really good pictures out there from that match as well. So, you know, do yourself a favor, go out there and check that out. But now we're throwing some tag teams in here. We're throwing Marcus and Yo-Yo in there, and that's one to watch for sure. I'm really looking forward to that. And then you nailed it, man. Tony Deppen and Robert Martyr is going to be insane as well. Really big fan of Robert, and I think you know, he's kind of one of those young next guy up kind of guys that you know, as people start to move out of independent wrestling, these are the kind of guys that are going to move up and kind of carry it a little bit further until younger blood comes in like themselves, you know, and it kind of continues to just evolve like it does. But, you know, he's definitely one of the next men up for sure. And then GCW gives us the aftermath on Sunday at 5:00. This is on Fight TV as well. I'm sure there's a package out there. I haven't looked, but I would imagine that's the way they usually do it, where you can order a package and kind of get all the shows for the entire weekend. This is the show that's going to bring us Joey Janela and Minoru Suzuki. That's, you know, kind of the big matchup on this show. Mercedes Martinez and Alley Catch. Really looking forward to that. Tony Deppen and Dante Leon, and Alex Colon versus Jimmy Lloyd. And look, man, Alex Colon is not the guy in GCW I want to be wrestling right now. He's got a lot to prove, because despite the fact that he continues to win a lot of the deathmatch tournaments, you know, he's not had that GCW World Championship. So, you know, this is a guy that has proved everything, but still looking for some of that gold. And the fact that he doesn't have it, I think probably has him in a pretty bad mood. But also, he didn't get some of these premier matchups, for the weekend. So is he going to take that out on Jimmy Lloyd? I wouldn't want to be Jimmy Lloyd to find out.
Yeah, man, just the story of Alex Colon in GCW as it is right now, he went from sort of being the crown bearer to the deathmatch championship to, unfortunately missing out on the GCW world title shot he was supposed to have with Gage due to an injury, but then moving on to losing the Ultraviolent Championship to Drew Parker en route back to Japan. So, I mean, Alex Colon, with all the accolades behind him still, he's got to be looking for that one big championship to put in his cabinet. And I'm sure he has his eyes strongly put on Gage versus Moxley the night before. But, I mean, even beyond that, I'm super looking forward to Tony Deppen and Dante Leon. As we all know, anyone that wants to step into the GCW space has to go through Tony Deppen, and he does not make that an easy task in any sort. So, I mean, Dante Leon's going to have to put on his strongest game. He's going to have to really tie up them work boots and get down to the mat with Tony Deppen to really earn that spot in GCW proper.
Yeah, man, this is, here we are once again. We do this every week, but we're on course for another absolutely loaded weekend. And I mean, what comes after this? Where do we go from here? I know the show on Sunday is titled The Aftermath, but what is the aftermath come Monday? When we get together again to do this, like, we're going to be talking about some big ramifications from the end of this weekend. We're going to be talking about that GCW championship and where we go from there. And, the end to some feud, potentially some ends to feuds, maybe new feuds starting. I mean, this is the making of a giant weekend. That Untitled show on Friday gives us the possibility for a lot of new champions to talk about on Monday. We always start the show off with new champions from over the weekend, but if you look at this list going all the way down the line, we might be spending a lot of time next Monday opening the show talking about new champions and new championships. It's going to be wild. You think going into this weekend is going to be wild. I think turning the page and going into next week is going to be even crazier.
Oh, absolutely. And, I got to kind of make a point, it's like a year ago, I remember seeing a post saying, can indie wrestling kind of draw their own big weekends separate from Mania? And I mean, I got to say, Indie Collective last October and all these GCW weekends where they're pairing up with different companies and really expanding their big weekends outside of just having main GCW shows really does kind of prove the testament that indie wrestling can draw on its own without needing to latch on to a big mainstream wrestling show weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that GCW has kind of proven that. I would like to see, some other opportunities out there for companies to put together a huge weekend without their involvement. Not that it's anything against them, but I want to see that other companies are capable and that this thing can kind of be done other places. I don't GCW being the flag bearer or the guys kind of carrying the torch of independent wrestling. I want to see some of these other companies step up and say, hey, we can have this huge weekend too. It just depends where it's going to be and who's going to be involved and things like that. But it's great. It's great for fans. It's great for independent wrestling. And there's so much content this weekend. A lot of it's even free. A lot of this stuff's on YouTube. If you don't have if you don't want to pay the Fight TV prices, or you don't have a IWTV subscription, get on YouTube, watch these ones that are going to be on YouTube. And if not, get you a trial for IWTV. Check out Beyond on Thursday and the Untitled show. And then, there's a lot of opportunities here to watch a lot of really good wrestling this weekend. And I can't wait, man. I'm stoked. I literally have nothing going on this coming weekend. My last couple weekends have been a little bit crazy, but this weekend we got nothing on the docket, and I'm jumping into all this stuff, man. Especially starting Thursday night and just rolling right into the weekend, man. I'm stoked. I can't wait.
Yeah, get your screens ready, get your snacks ready, get your drinks ready, because we're locking in for another huge weekend on the indie wrestling scene. But with that, thank you all so much for listening to another edition of the Beastcast. For Weapon X, I'm James Lastora, and we will see you all next time.
So we make the music.